Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast and welcome to Theory Thursday. So Theory Thursday is our series where we have a look at one specific part of Blood Bowl. Whether it's a stat or a strat, the whole goal here is to understand something better and figure out how it can help us play the game we love even better. So vampires have landed, we've all had a little bit of time to play with them, and one of the key things about the vampire roster that actually hasn't changed from last edition is their special skill, which is Hypnotic Gaze. Now, those of you out there who've played with Eldril Sidewinder will already have used this, and I think Boa Constrictor has it as well. But when it comes to vampires, it's actually a pretty massive part of how the team plays. So it made sense to spend some time having a look at Hypno Gaze, how it works, what's effective, and some clever ways to use it. Okay, so Hypno Gaze, it is a special skill, okay? It's one of the ones that you can't learn, generally speaking. It's just a part of how the player operates. So, the brief of Hypno Gaze, it is a special action all of itself. So, what does that mean? We've got this a few different times in Blood Bowl where they're like, this action is a special action and replaces other actions. Hypnotic Gaze, it's like a blitz, it's like a pass. It's an action. Now, you can move and then Hypno Gaze. You don't have to move, but you can move and then Hypno Gaze. But you can't block. You can't pass. You can't hand off. You can't blitz. All you can do is a move action followed by a Hypno Gaze action. Now, the Hypno Gaze action is used at the end of your movement, or no movement at all, to target an opposing player that you are in base contact, that you are marking. So the goal here is to use Hypno Gaze. Let's set the scene. Your vampire, your Eldril Sidewinder, your Snake Man, they slither up to the target and they use a magical power, or however you want to describe it, to distract that player. And that's what we're trying to do here. You distract that player, and that just opens up so many other plays. We've got a cage dive, or we've got a free dodge away. There's a couple of things that we'll talk about when we look at actually the statistics of how successful it's likely to be. But that's the goal here. You move up to a player, and you distract them. You can move first. Where should we put that? You can't block, you can't blitz, you can't throw, you can't hand off. All you can do is move and then Hypno Gaze. And how do you Hypno Gaze? So you wander up to the target and then you take an agility test. So if we're looking at Eldril, if we're looking at a vampire, we're likely to be looking at a 2+ roll here. But it's an agility test, and agility tests are modified by the amount of tackle zones that you are in. So we're looking for opposition tackle zones, excluding the target. Now, this is something I misread right at the beginning of this edition, so I always thought it was -1 all the time, but it's not. So if you go base to base with a single player, so your vampire wanders up to a blodge werewolf, for example, it's just a straight agility roll. It's 2+. If you've got a tackle zone, it's 3+. If you've got 2 tackle zones, it's 4+. Really simple, but you ignore the target's tackle zone, and you ignore your friendly tackle zones. And we've got to the point where you've wandered up, you've successfully used your agility roll to take away their tackle zone, and you've used Hypno Gaze, and it's worked. What happens? So the target loses their tackle zone until they're next activated. You may be thinking, I don't care. Well, it's actually massive. And I'll tell you what, we'll switch over to the other graphic and I'll kind of explain why. And this is why. So there's 2 massive things that Hypno Gaze does. It doesn't hurt your opponent, it doesn't knock them down, it won't bust the ball free or anything like that. But it will do 2 primary things. The first one is that they no longer exert a tackle zone. So you don't need to dodge away from them. Or if you're dodging through their tackle zone, the tackle zone isn't there. You just walk straight by them. If the ball lands or is thrown to a square next door to them, there's no -1. They can't use guard. They can't assist. That player, for all intents and purposes, just ceases to exist, except they're taking up that square. Now, it's very much like Bonehead. Basically, what you do here is you run up to a player, you pass your agility test, and it forces them to Bonehead. Now, you may be thinking, I don't really care, my player's activated, it's fine, okay, tackle zones are gone, but that's alright. There is a second thing that in this edition is can be really potent, and it's this one here that came up in an FAQ a couple of years ago potentially. Can players that are prone, stunned, or have lost their tackle zone use skills such as dodge, block, sidestep, or wrestle, amongst others? No. A player that is prone, stunned, or has lost their tackle zone cannot use any skills or traits unless it is specifically stated in the description of that skill or trait. The key ones we're thinking of for that skill or trait is stuff like iron hard skin and that kind of thing, a foul appearance, that kind of stuff that's kind of non-direct. So that blodge werewolf, that war dancer, that gutter runner, although I don't ever condone attacking a gutter runner, you go up and you hypnogaze that target, they lose all of their skills. That's massive. If you've got a ball carrier that's got blodge step, for example, you're playing Elf Union and they've got a little guy with a little skill and you're like, oh man, I got a blodge step flipping ball carrier here, you can hypnogaze them to take those skills away. Now, generally speaking, you're going to be using hypnogaze to nullify the tackle zone so that you can move past that player, or that to make that player not give an assist anymore in combat. The primary way of this is to take the corner of a cage, hypnogaze them, and then walk past that person and punch the ball carrier in the middle of the cage. That is the classic hypnogaze move. That's the primary kind of action for it. But this is massive as well, so I really want to stress it because it can be such a useful thing. If you've got a block werewolf, you've got a block vampire, you can walk up, hypnogazing with somebody else, and that block vampire now gets to use block against a block target, and it switches off dodge. It's really effective, and especially with the new vampire team, if you're hunting gutter runners, you can use one of your vampires to switch off their dodge skill. And they're likely to have block because they're gutter runners as well. It switches off both their skills. Then they just become a strength 2 armor 8+ target. All of your vampires will get at least 2 dice against them. And it's not hard to get 3 dice. At that point, it turns that gutter runner's little defensive shield straight off. And it's all action against the hull. So it's a massive boon. Now, it's not the thing you're going to be doing all of the time. But there are some really good examples and some really good strategies to make the most of it. But you may be thinking, how effective is it? How often is it going to succeed? So let's have a quick look at the numbers. Okay, so let's have a look at the success rate. Now, as we've already said, it's an agility roll with modifiers for other tackle zones. So we've got a little grid here, and this is the team reroll factor. So we'll ignore this if you don't have any team rerolls, you just look in there. But if you've got a team reroll and you really want to make it happen, then this combo's there. So Edge 1 or Edge 2 plus, you are looking at 83%, 2+, right? Or with a reroll, it's 1 in 36 chance of failure. With Edge 3+, so generally speaking, if you're looking at a vampire with an additional tackle zone in there, so you've had to base another player at the same point, 67% chance it's going to work. With a reroll, it goes up to 89%. Edge 4+, so 2 additional tackle zones, 50% chance, 75% chance with a reroll. Edge 5+, it's 33 with a 56% chance, and Edge 6 is 17% chance and a 31% chance of the reroll. So this is the zone at which it becomes very negative. Generally speaking, though, even if you're a vampire with 1-2 additional tackle zones, so your vampire's wandered in there and put himself next to 3 other players and he wants to mesmerize one of them, actually, with a team reroll, it's a 75% chance that it's going to work. So it's definitely something to have in your back pocket. Now, when we're looking at vampires, we always talk about the fact that the pro skill is just fabulous in every single way. So we are going to have a look at the effect of the pro skill. So the pro skill allows you to say, I'm going to use pro to try and reroll that dice. You roll a 3+. If you roll a 3+, you can reroll a dice in that dice pool. If you don't roll a 3+, it doesn't matter. So it's less effective than a team reroll by a factor of, what, a third, right? So Edge 2+, 92% chance with the pro reroll. Edge 3+, 82% chance with that reroll. And Edge 4+, we're looking at 66%. Right, so basically you're kind of looking at +1 to your die roll for pro. That's the kind of stat that you can get your mind in. Now, if you're running vampires and you've got pro, there are also going to be those times where you've had to use pro to pass your bloodlust, because one kind of real key thing here is that with Hypnogaze, you don't get +1 to your Bloodlust, to blitz or block, because you're not blocking, you're not blitzing, you are just using this roll. So for your throwers and your runners, it's going to be 2+ to activate with Bloodlust. For your Juggernaut boys and the big beastie, you are going to be looking for 3+. So definitely going to be less effective. And if you've got Pro, 1 in 3 times you probably would have had to use Pro to actually get to this point. But it's still definitely something to look at. Now, specifically, the reason we're looking at these stats is because what I want you to think about is a situation, and I had a game last night where this came up. My Vargeist, who's great, Edge 4+, really solid, is being based by 2 opposing players. And he's 3 squares away from the ball carrier. The ball carrier is unassisted, a turn away from scoring, and he's got a prime target. But he's in 2 tackle zones, so he's not dodging out. He's not dodging out, not on a 4+. I had some vampires. Now, the vampires couldn't reach the ball carrier, but what the vampires did successfully do is move up and hypnogaze both of the players that were tagging the Vargeist. That took those tackle zones off the Vargeist completely. All I had to do was Bloodlust 2+ to activate him to just go and have a blitz. The tackle zones of those players didn't exist anymore, therefore he didn't have to dodge, so I didn't have to risk a 4+ roll with a loner 4+ piece. So it's that kind of thing that Hypnogaze will help you do. You're not going to be able to just hypnogaze someone to death, but actually what you're going to do is you're going to be able to free up other players. You're going to be able to free up other angles to take out, and if you use it against your target, you are going to free up them from having the skills that are going to keep them alive. It's a really potent little assist, and it's a massive part and a massive boon of vampires. Statistically, the vampire team's pretty good, and running it vanilla is good fun. But Hypnogaze is just going to save you some of those rolls. And the reason I've got the success rates up here is because we need to look at the Hypnogaze and consider it versus a dodge roll sometimes. And that is something that I really want to stress. Yeah, your vampire might be better off doing things like blitzing, but you only get 1 blitz per turn. If you can swing in and get an 83% chance at a Hypnogaze, instead of taking your blitz, you should definitely do it. If you've got a team reroll, it's even better. But what you're doing here is you're being able to take that first die roll, and if it goes wrong, nothing bad happens. There's no turnover from failing a Hypnogaze. You just end up next to the opponent. So if you've got a 2+ dodge to break away and hit the ball carrier, why not try a Hypnogaze with a different player? Because then you don't need to take that 2+ dodge. And if you fail your Hypnogaze, you still have the chance of the 2+ dodge. And if you're failing a 2+ Hypnogaze, you've already rolled your 1, so you're probably going to be okay. Definitely not guaranteed, but it's that kind of switcheroo that this is going to be useful for. So looking at the success rates here and thinking about, right, I've got Edge 3+ Hypnogaze and an Edge 2+ dodge. Well, I might as well just take the dodge. It's better. It's not better. It's not better at all, because you get this success rate added to this success rate, really, if you think about it. Because 2/3 of the time, if you're taking an Edge 3+ Hypnogaze, to free up your player from not having to dodge, it's a 3+ that gets you a 1+. It's excellent. Okay, so to sum up with Hypnogaze, there's a couple of different strategies that you think about immediately. The first is just removing the tackle zones of a player on the edge of a cage and allowing your other player to go in there and blitz. That's the most obvious one. It's going to be the one that's the most impactful. The other is this here, which is taking away their skills, which is going to be huge if you want to target a specific player. And think about this. If they're bringing Hackflem, if they're bringing Griff, and you want to just absolutely capitalize on a nice block, if you've got a nice 2-die block, but they've got Blodge, it's kind of, it's a bit, but if you've got a vampire or somebody else with Hypnogaze as a way that's kind of around and gives you that opportunity to then move the Vargeist in, to move somebody else in to just really hit them really powerfully, then actually it can be an excellent use of a turn to get some really strong removal in there. And it will be something that your opponent won't necessarily see coming. They'll be looking at the board, they'll be seeing the pieces. Hypnogaze allows you to just remove a piece, or to change a piece, or to downgrade a piece. So that's really useful. That's really useful. And just that bit there, I cannot stress, so good. You know what it's like. Right, I've got a 2+ dodge onto the ball carrier. Let's go. I've got a 2+ dodge here for the touchdown. Well, if you've got Hypno Gaze in range, you can turn off the tackle zones, and then it becomes a no+ dodge, and you're away. So definitely consider that. You can downgrade the opponents, you can make everything easier, and sometimes you just save the risk of a dodge roll or a bad block. Really effective. Not the most overpowered thing in the world, but it is going to give you options, and that's what's really exciting about it. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Let me know what you think about Hypno Gaze in this edition, and talk in the comments. Let me know if there's a cool strategy, a cool situation you've gone with. I think we're going to try and look at cage diving soon, which is going to buddy up with this really well. But I'm a big fan. I'm loving running the vampires. Hypno Gaze is such a useful tool to have, and I just wish Skaven could have it. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy Hypno Gazing. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.